It's me again, Dr. Leah Kliansky, and I'm so excited to bring my friend Kristin Mervich on this episode because, guys, she is a genius. So let me tell you just briefly how Kristin and I met. We were in a mastermind with Danielle Swim, and when that mastermind ended, we couldn't stop talking. So now we just Vox each other about 1,000,000 times a day. Voxer's a voice app. We just brainstorm ideas about growing our businesses, and Kristin's story and her ideas are just so incredible that I knew you would want to listen to them too. So, Kristin, I'm so glad to have you join me on this podcast.
Thank you, Leah. I'm so excited to be here. So excited about the Worth It Practice podcast overall, too.
You've been so supportive. I appreciate you so much. Kristin, I was hoping that you could tell a little bit of your own story. Can you tell the audience what you're currently doing, what you've built, and the stage you're at right now?
I am a licensed clinical social worker. I started my journey as an anxiety and OCD therapist. That was in my internships days. I worked in a very specialized unit in higher levels of care. That was honestly probably one of the beginning markers of me getting into my private practice and it being so successful so early on because of my training and my background and my niche. I dove into private practice in 2019. During the COVID years, I did not have children at this point, and so I worked a lot and my private practice was really successful. I loved where I trained to be an anxiety and OCD specialist, and I wanted to give back, pay it forward in the same way, and create a team of specialized anxiety and OCD therapists in Arizona, specifically because Arizona does not have as many resources as other areas of the country. And so I knew that, had a baby in 2021 that kind of got put on pause for a little bit. I had my second child in January of 2023, and by July of 2023 is when I hired on my first therapist. And that was going great. I really enjoyed him. He's still on my team today. From there, I was working like in my business and on my business a lot. I was still very much a therapist in my business though, and so a lot of my growth plans felt like they were moving a little bit more slowly, and I gave myself grace. I was a mom of 2 under 2, and obviously that takes a lot of my time and attention too. When my second son was about 18 months old, we found out that he had stage 4 neuroblastoma, which is a childhood cancer. It is a very high-risk cancer. We stepped right into treatment, and immediately my business pivoted overnight. Overnight, I was no longer a therapist working in my practice, and I was very much the practice owner working on our practice. In the very beginning stages, did a little bit of all the above of referring clients out, pausing them for a little bit, just deciding what was clinically needed for all of them individually, and then hired on more therapists. And now it's a small group practice with multiple therapists in there. And I also have a coaching business for therapist mothers and also practice provider mothers overall, and helping them to create a business that fits the season of motherhood that they're in.
You also have a 3-month-old baby too.
Yes, this year's been a whirlwind. I have 3 kids under 5. One of them is about 3 months old.
So when I met Kristin, she was doing chemotherapy with her 2-year-old. She was heavily pregnant with her 3rd child, and she was rapidly expanding her private practice. So when you think that nobody can do that in this economy, look at Kristin. It's pretty incredible. It's that kind of situation where a lot of people would have stopped, and it's the situation where you actually doubled down, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How did you do that? Like, how did you turn your brain from clinician brain taking it slow to CEO brain rapidly expanding? I have a whole new role and I'm trying to change things. And how many clinicians do you have now? Is it 6?
There were 6, but there's 4 right now.
There's 4 right now. So it's kind of shifted a little bit.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make that mindset shift that allowed you to do that? Because I think that's the thing, right, that made this possible for you.
This is something that I say often. It's been something that has kind of been an anchor for me throughout this cancer journey. And that's, I don't have to be grateful for my mountain, the cancer in my case. I don't have to be grateful for my mountain, but I can be grateful for the person I am becoming because of my mountain. One of the greatest gifts that cancer gave me and my family There's a lot that I would trade it all in an instant, but I think it's so important when you're faced with something like that, you automatically are just taking in everything that life has to offer. Your gratitude is to a whole other level. Your perspective shifts almost instantaneously. I would credit the perspective shift, the perspective gift that I think really almost every cancer parent that I've ever talked to has experienced, right? That has been a huge part of why I was able to grow. I knew from day one that I didn't want to give up my business. It's something that is a sense of normalcy for me. It, helps remind me of who I am outside of this journey, who my kid's mom is outside of this journey. That was something that it just like overnight, I did not have time to care about perfectionism and delaying goals. I didn't have time to care about a fear of being seen. I didn't have time to care if I belonged to any group or if like someone would judge me for what I was doing in the process. I just had to go with it. I wanted to be able to be with my son as often as he wants and needs me. I wanted to be there for my other two children and to do that without a financial barrier as well, as much as we could possibly help that. And that was a huge driver for me.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that you realized that you really wanted that normalcy in that business, and you kind of just let go of fear and just took action. That's the thing that makes an entrepreneur work, right? You can sit there and plan things forever, and if you don't actually do the thing, then you're stuck, right? You never move forward at all. And it sounds like it forced some action really quickly on you.
Everything up until this point I would have achieved at some point. It just, I don't know, maybe it was years from then. And it just accelerated the whole process. And I also think that, yes, now I've achieved everything that was originally a goal for me. But since then, there have been new goals that I've identified that would have never happened without me becoming a different person in the process.
Was there a moment where you realized that you didn't see yourself as much as a therapist and more as a business owner? Because that's sort of an interesting thing to talk about. People often say, oh, I'm not a CEO. I'm just a therapist who owns a business. And then sometimes those people one day look in the mirror and say, I'm a CEO. It took me forever to start writing founder and CEO under my name when I would say what my title was in my business. A really long time. Did you just one day do it? Like, how did you shift your identity, that part of your identity?
That's a great question. And I can totally relate to you describing that. I was just thinking about how what my title is even in my business now, and I don't think it's even shifted it. I think it's owner and clinical director. I have seen myself more as a business owner, as an entrepreneur in the last several months. I don't know that there was a point that I can put a peg in to say like, oh yeah, this is the moment that I've decided that I am now identified this way. I think it likely shifted, frankly, as I was in more of the CEO hat than I was a therapist hat. When I had less sessions on my plate as a therapist, for me personally, started another business. And then a lot of it probably came down to you and I in our little mini mastermind that we kind of constantly have going, where I had started to think about like other business ideas. And what has happened over the course of the last 15 months or so since this all started is that I feel like my confidence as an entrepreneur has grown. I borrow this quote from, I think this originally came from Keisha Got Married, but she'll often say, if you're gifted the vision, you're also gifted the resourcefulness to turn that vision into your reality. I really stand by that now. And so once I started to just think of like, oh, I have this idea, and then I have this idea, and some of the ideas have nothing to do with therapy, that's when it shifted. But it's also, as I've been able to identify more as a business owner and as an entrepreneur and a CEO, I take action far more quickly.
Oh, that's so interesting. So it was sort of like from a behavioral place. Like my behavior changed. I wasn't doing therapist behavior. I was doing CEO business behavior. So suddenly I started identifying more as CEO. And then the more I do that business owner, entrepreneur, CEO behavior, and the more confident I get, then I trust myself, then I take more decisive action more quickly even than before. And so it's just kind of been like in this cycle of confidence building.
Yeah, almost just like it goes up and up and up. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really powerful. I'm just thinking, I have a friend who's an entrepreneur. She does this too, where she'll say, I am this, like she'll label herself a thing. And then suddenly she sort of becomes that. It's almost like the label you give yourself becomes the identity that then you can support. And now I'm suddenly wondering if I should be doing that more. Like, what are the things I could label myself as that I could become?
Yeah, I actually, interestingly, I have done that with reading. I've always been in audio. I definitely learn maybe a little bit more fast, just a little bit more quickly, but also absorb things a bit better. I'm an audio learner. So I've always listened to podcasts a little bit more than I've read, or I've listened to audiobooks more than I've read. But then recently I started saying, no, I am a reader. And since then I read every single day. That's been something that I've tried out.
That's really cool. I'm now thinking, what would you label yourself next if you were going to up level again?
Well, you and I have talked about this, but something that I am brainstorming in the background is I really want mothers overall, probably in a more niche direction, entrepreneurial mothers, to feel really resourced and supported. Oftentimes, even just labeling myself as I am resourced. I can figure out how to feel resourced. Not just I can be resourceful, but how can I also feel resourced in the midst of a pretty chaotic life at the moment, right? That has been something where I've gotten really creative, right? I think another thing is I haven't always thought about myself as a creative person. I don't know that that's been labeled. I've talked about this before. I think a lot of times growing up, for example, when, the labels come at you when you're growing up, and Kristin's a kind person. I don't know that I've heard often you're really creative. It was just interesting. I was doing a craft with my son and my family for Thanksgiving, and we were all making these turkeys. I thought my turkey looked absolutely ridiculous. So I told my son, just because mommy is not an artist in this way doesn't mean that I'm not creative. It dawned on me, being able to label yourself as the identity that you want to step into. And honestly, as I'm even talking out loud right now, that's something that I've done really consistently since my son's cancer diagnosis, is I journal every morning. I am labeling myself as things that I want to see myself becoming. And so lately, my power words, if you will, have been creative, resourceful. I do that as a practice every single day.
I love that. And I also think it's interesting because one of the first words I would use for you is creative, just naturally, because you are really creative with business. You're always thinking about what's a new way of providing this service. What's a new way of connecting with this therapist? What's another way of appearing and connecting to an audience? You are really creative. I don't know how good your turkey skills are, but in terms of, that's one of the beautiful things I personally think about being an entrepreneur, is that you get to be really creative. You get to envision something that no one else has, right? It's your baby. I think that can be overly precious. It's your bonsai tree. It's going to grow the
your
way
body of work,
grows, right? But you get to trim it into the general shape you're going for. You have to go with its natural direction, but you get to be artistic, and you get to say to yourself, oh, do I want this to be private pay or not? Am I going to focus on this specialty thing? Do I want to include intensives? Do I want to change my structure? Do I want to hire this person? And those are all creative choices, and they're what make building a practice fun.
Yeah, it has to be fun while you're at it. And I agree that the creativity that can be brought into it is something that is what makes it fun.
Yeah, you and I are always having a lot of fun.
It's fun to talk about practice building. It's fun to talk about entrepreneurship. And I think it's also because it's being built in a way where we get to use our creativity, but also in a way that's really aligned with our life, where we like our life outside and within the business and how they merge together, because we're building something that is complementary to what we want our lives to look like.
If you were talking to past you of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you were giving yourself advice for how to become this resourced, creative person, this entrepreneur that you are now with this CEO mindset, what advice would you give yourself? Either what you normally did or how you would have accelerated the process?
It boils down to, you already have the skills within you to do and to create whatever it is that you're envisioning in your mind. You also have the skills already within you to create something that is not yet in your mind, that something's there, but you can't quite articulate it yet. You can't quite put together the puzzle pieces yet. It's a little bit blurry still for you, but something's brewing. You have what it takes, but the fear, and that's something that we have to melt off in some fashion. A lot of times I think what holds people back is a fear of, let's just say, like, if I'm going to do things differently than my colleagues in the therapy field are doing them. I remember thinking back before I really hired my first practitioner on, and I was sitting down with somebody. They basically told me that I couldn't build it the way that I've built it today, that there would either be too much turnover or that no one would really want to work for me in that way. And that's been far from the truth. And I think I would say that I genuinely think my therapists very much enjoy working for me, and I enjoy having them. I don't need to be there 24/7 in order for that to happen. And in fact, I'm not there often at all at this point. It happened pretty early on for me. And it doesn't mean that I'm not involved. They can come to me. I'm a resource to them always. I found that interesting. That was something that held me back in the beginning, is feeling like I had to create something in the way that other people have done it. It shied me away from trusting how I wanted to do it.
I feel like that happens to people all the time. I remember even just going into private pay when I left Baylor, and I had people come to me and say, well, you're going to fail. Yeah, I don't think so. But there's always that, I think, discomfort with someone who's thinking outside the box, building something a little bit different. And then it's scary to be different. It's scary to do something. You kind of hit this imposter syndrome. You wonder if your therapist colleagues will judge you for doing something a little bit different. You know that when I started this podcast, I had deep anxiety about what other psychologists would think of this podcast. So It's like you think you get through it, and then you do the next scary thing, and then you have to work through it all over again when you're doing something new.
What I think of when you were describing that is this like fear that we all have, that most of us might have, a fear of not belonging at some point to some group of people, whether that might be your family and doing things differently if you're like the first entrepreneur in your family and that's not how you have identified, or you are fearful of building a practice differently than how your colleagues have done it, whatever it might be, but a fear of not belonging to a group of people. And sometimes I think about that through the lens of, I fear success more than I fear failure. And I fear success because what if I have to change who I am, how I identify in the process? And I like that version of me, but I'm afraid of what other people might think of that version of me.
Right? It's that we all want to fit in. And especially, women have been punished throughout history forever, right? Yeah. For dreaming too big and doing things that you're not supposed to do, or doing things that men do. It is a normal fear to have. It's a well-reasoned fear to have when you decide to stand out in any capacity. But it's really fun.
What I've done recently, and I don't think I have told you this yet, but I have been looking up and studying successful women entrepreneurs from some, you cannot quiz me on the names today because I don't remember them offhand, but one was one of the first Black female entrepreneurs who was also a mom in the 1890s or something like that. And what a powerful example that is.
She was selling hair products, right?
Yeah. I don't remember her name, but yes.
Yeah, it's like you can't do new things and challenge yourself if you're terrified the entire time that other people aren't going to accept you. It just won't work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I love that, where you're looking for role models, basically. You're looking for models ahead of you. You're looking for representation, basically, because if you can see someone else do it, then it grows your confidence that you can also achieve that same thing.
Right. And it's just we love to learn from other people and other people who think, at a higher level than we do. And that's another version of another kind of activity within that, looking at, past females who have come before us and female entrepreneurs who have come before us, and kind of taking their wisdom and inspiration and kind of infusing that into our identity.
Yeah, and it helps to talk to other people too who are doing similar things, who are thinking big things, because then that energy, you and I can inspire each other. And that's one of those wonderful things about having community, where other people are rooting for you and it's abundance focused. Everyone can be doing well, and you can root each other on in the hard moments, and that really helps.
Yeah, yes, I 100% stand by that. I think it's so important to get in any kind of room that you possibly can, in a tiny room where it's just you and I and we're boxing back and forth, other types of rooms, but that's just going to make you feel more empowered, and there's space for all of the success that there is, and there's lots of it.
And that's why people will think you're a fantastic business coach. So, Kristin, tell tell people how to find you if they're looking for a business coach who gets it from a therapist to mom perspective. And it's just so warm and inspiring.
Yes, thank you. You can find me on Instagram at Therapreneur Mother. I think you'll have that in the show notes. It might be a little bit of a mouthful to spell, but yes, at Therapreneur Mother on Instagram, and you can email me at Kristin with an IN at therapreneurmother.com. I love just having conversations. I'm a therapist, I'm a mom, I'm a medical. A lot of people who I connect with are also parents of kids with medical complexities in some sort of way. I definitely get that world, and business and private practice, and helping us to step into this new identity of I can be all of these things that I want to be.
Yeah. I mean, anyone would be lucky to be able to work with you, because I know I get so much out of our conversations with each other. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for being on the show. I really, really appreciate you, and all the ways to contact Kristin will be in the show notes. So thank you for joining me on the Worth It Practice podcast. I hope that hearing just different ways that people can think about business is inspiring to you, because I also learned a lot in this conversation just talking to Kristin. So have a great week. I'll talk to you next week.